Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Bicep community call of February 2025. All right, our O.34 release, export as Bicep. This is a huge one. We're really excited about this. People asked for some updates last month, and it is rolling out. It's available in RC portal today. And it will, take time to roll out for the next month. Some people will have it available in their region, some people will not. But our engineer who worked on this, one of our engineers who worked on this will be presenting this in a little bit. So you can ask questions directly or just wait around to see how it works. Private modules, ACR, VS Code completions, kind of a handful or a mouthful. But basically we have code completions in VS Code for private modules. And this is something people have been asking for, and now we have it. So it's not just public modules, but private modules also show up in the code completions. Our third one, experimental typed variables. So for variables, you can also add a type to it, kind of straightforward. It's an optional feature, and it's experimental. So you'll have to add that experimental flag. But if you have any questions, definitely put them in chat. Anthony, who worked on them, can probably answer them for you. We have some other bug fixes that I didn't think super important to mention here, but we'll include that in the release notes when the release is out. Hopefully next week is our plan. Cool. We can move on to export as Bicep.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Hey, my name's David. I was one of the engineers that worked on this feature, export as Bicep. Yeah, let's just go in the demo. So, hope everyone can see my screen, right?
Yep. Maybe zoom in a little bit.
Zoom in, okay. Is better?
I think it looks good.
Cool. Okay, so yeah. So I have a resource group. It has a single resource. It's just a simple key vault resource. And if you go to the actual resource, and on this left-hand side, you click on automation tab and then export template. Previously, there was always a ARM template button, I guess, you could always click, or else default. But now, there's a Bicep tab, right? And once you click on it, it'll actually, export this single resource, this key vault resource, the template for that in Bicep. So that'll be really easy for people to kind of understand how it's written in Bicep and use it that way. Yep, here we go. So yeah, you see that, the param names, the resource type, all the properties, all in Bicep. It's really nice. We currently don't have syntax highlighting or editor capability supported right now, and we actually don't have any plans for the near future for that. Likewise, we don't have you can't export the param files as Bicep templates as either. So yeah, that's some limitations we have for that. If you go back to the resource group, you can also do the same thing, export the entire resource group as a Bicep template, which is pretty nice. Like Stephanie mentioned, it's still rolling out to all the regions, but it's available in the RC portal, I believe. And yeah, and one thing to mention also is the exporting of the actual deployment, exporting that deployment as a template is not supported, and no plans for that in the near future. So yep, that's just a quick demo of the feature.
Cool. Thanks, David.
Thanks.
If there are any questions, put them in chat. Yeah, like David said, there's some things that we don't support and we don't have any plans for them. We did some investigation and it's not that we don't want to, it's that it's a little more complicated in the API that we weren't able to include. However, if you guys make a big enough deal about it, we can maybe push the portal team to prioritize some things like syntax highlighting. But then again, we do have support for Expert as Bicep now, so that is a pretty good solution, I'd like to think. And thank you, John, for putting the link to the RC portal in chat. This is basically like the portal. It's just the test environment, basically, that you could test out some preview features, basically. Cool. I see some questions in chat. Is it planned to provide subscription exports? I don't believe so. I'm not sure, Anthony, if you have an answer to that.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's the same. It's backed by the same API that export template calls, and there's no subscription level export support there, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Cool. And we also have documentation available for Export as Bicep as well. I can put that link in chat since I don't have it handy right now, but I'll put it there in a minute. Thanks, David. So our next topic is from Engen, deploy time parameters and Bicep param files.
All right, thank you. So let me share my screen first.
Okay.
And here it is. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My topic will be pretty quick. So we have a feature request we reported almost 2 years ago, and I'm going to share the link over the chat. We'd like to bring it to our attention because now we have a chance to address this feature request. And let me explain the reason behind this feature request first, then I'd like to discuss it and get your views on it. So imagine there is a Bicep file that has some resource definitions and a parameter definition in it. So if the parameter definition doesn't have a default value of the complementary Bicep param file, doesn't have the value for this parameter, we cannot compile the Bicep file to an ARM JSON because there is no value given to this parameter. And also, we cannot initiate a deployment using the Azure CLI with this Bicep file. Even if we provide the value for the parameter using the inline params feature, like we cannot initiate the deployment, even if we provide the value using the inline params feature, compilation of the Bicep file will fail and the deployment will not start. So during the conversion process of the Bicep file to an ARM JSON, which will be invoked by the AZ CLI under the hood when we run the deployment create command, we are going to have BCP258 error, and the conversion will be stopped. Deployment will not start. So it's a like blocking type of error. Since it's possible now to provide values for parameters using inline params feature, for example, like this, I think we're in a good place to maybe replace this diagnostic error with something else, like this diagnostic error can be changed. And I'd like to discuss two options with you. If I go here, in the first option, we basically replace the validation error to a linter error. So with this change, we will be able to configure the severity of the BCP258 in the bicep config JSON file and treat it as a, I don't know, like a warning, for example, or an info, or maybe we can completely turn it off. So the conversion will not be stopped, and the deployment will use the value provided in the inline param. If it's not provided, then the Azure ARM backend will complain about the missing parameter and the deployment will fail. That's expected, but if we provide it, then it will be used. Even we can have a kind of like warning message, for example, when there's a parameter with no value assigned in the bicep file, and the warning message can read like, there's a parameter with no value, please ensure the value is given in the deployment command, or something like that. So when you check the logs, you will see the warning message in this approach. So flows doesn't need any change in the existing bicep files. We can keep the severity level as error by default, just like what we have currently. But if you wanna like lower the severity, you can convert it, or you can change it to a warning or an info, for example, or even you can completely turn it off. So this is one of the changes that we can make. The other option, there's a second option, which could require some changes in the ecosystem. So we can introduce a new, for example, a function, just like we have, read environment variables function. We can have read inline param function, which reads the given value in the inline param, and then assign it to the parameter as a value. Or we can use a decorator, for example, to mark the parameter that the value is gonna come from a given parameter, the inline parameter, for example. Or like personally, I don't not super fan of introducing a new keyword or a marking, but it could be like technically, it could be a new keyword. For example, this inline keyword, or a marking like an exclamation mark at the end of the param name, for example, to tell the compiler that like skip checking the values for this specific parameter, but like get the value from the given inline parameter, and then assign it when you are compiling. This could be another option as well. So pros of this approach is we can configure the behavior for each parameter specifically, but the cons is the existing bicep or the bicep param files might need to change. So pros and cons for the solution one. Pros, it doesn't need any change in the existing bicep files. We can keep the severity level as error, for example, by default. Cons is it's a project-wide configuration, not specific to a parameter or a file. So there could be some like unwanted complications when you change the severity, or when you lower the severity, and you have like two parameters with no default values, and one of them is gonna come from an inline parameter, but the second one is just like missing. So yeah. So what do you think? So which option you like the most, and maybe more importantly, why? And yeah, pretty much this is the this is the two option that could help us to like maybe change the behavior of this BCP 258, which requires all the values for the parameters given at the development time.
I think we could also put like a vote in chat as well.
Yep.
And for solution 2, maybe a vote between the 3 different options as well. But any longer comments, definitely put them in the issue. We do lose the chat after our call. I try to mark down all of the important comments, but sometimes we might miss something. So if there's anything that you think is really important that you want to make sure is shared, put them in the issue itself.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much. And back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks. Looks like a lot of people are saying, sorry,
Yeah,
I
I'm
sneezed.
looking at the
Sorry.
chat.
A lot of people are saying the decorator is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the chat and I see lots of like, I vote for decorators and I agree with the decorator approach.
Yes. And there's some questions that we do have time to answer these questions now. So I don't know if Engen, you want to answer any of them. So there's one that said, can we ignore parameters that are missed that are marked as secure because those shouldn't be included plain text in a param file?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's a good good point.
We could think about it and give an
Yeah,
answer.
yeah. I think we have to think about it a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. Would this help get a solution in place where the entire deployment can be declared in the Bicep without also needing to specify additional information in CLI or PowerShell?
Yeah, I remember we have this like Bicep deploy feature. Probably is gonna address this feature request or the question. So I'm not like 100% up to date with the Bicep deploy feature. Stephanie, if you know more, or maybe Anthony, that would be awesome if you can share a little bit more maybe about the Bicep deploy feature, which has like this .bicep deploy file extension, and you. Okay, let me give it to you.
Yeah. Also, Shenglong also has a little bit of context there, but I think this specifically, I don't think will fully solve that. Yes, because there's sometimes parameters that need to be specified, but if you mark it here, it won't fail before the deployment, but it may fail during the deployment. Okay, cool. I think those are all the questions. If there's any other questions, definitely put them in chat and we can answer them in chat. Sounds good. Thank you. Our next topic is resource existence checks. Tate, I don't know if you want me to share. I'd be happy to share. Otherwise, if you want to share your screen, you can as well.
Yeah, if you could share, that'd be great.
Cool.
Thanks. So, hi all, I'm Tate Small-again, and I'll be working on the design for resource existence checks in Bicep. The goal for this feature is to enable you to use a resource's existence to affect the behavior of the deployment without causing it to fail. It's still in the design phase, but we wanted to go ahead and show what we're planning to build and then get some feedback on to make sure that we're covering all the different use cases that are expected for this feature. Next slide, please. So the first feature to support existence checks that we're planning is the only if not exist decorator. This can be used to accomplish the behavior where on the first deployment, the resource will be created, but on all future deployments, no changes would be made to the resource. So this can help avoid overwriting things that you'd like to set on the initial deployment, but then you want to leave alone for all future deployments. One example where this might come in handy is something like Key Vault Secrets, where you just want to set it and then forget it. In addition to the decorator, we also plan to add the ability to modify resource properties based on whether that resource exists prior to the deployment. So we plan to do that by allowing this.exists, which will be true or false based on whether or not resource A has been deployed previously. If it has, then it would be value 1. If not, it would be value 2. Next slide, please. The final addition that we're thinking about adding or planning on adding is a modifier to the existing keyword, where if you add a question mark to existing, It won't fail if the resource doesn't exist. Instead, it will return null, and you can reference that in other resource properties to modify those results. So in this example, for resource A, when we add the existing question mark, in resource B, we can check and see whether that resource A returned a value or returned null, and then set up the value based on that. However, that can't be used directly in a resource condition. So in order to accomplish it in a resource condition, you'd need to pass it as a parameter into a module. So module M does that, where it has a parameter exists, which is a Boolean, and it receives whether or not resource A is null, and then it can be applied in the resource condition. Keep in mind that this will have some reduced capabilities for what if and validate. Next slide. So that's what we're planning on building, and we have this survey that would be great if you had some time to fill out to just mention any scenarios that these wouldn't cover, and share your use cases to make sure that we're considering all different approaches. And that's it for me. I can go through any questions.
So the first one asks, could we use this to read in values similar to the Terraform data source providers? I'm not quite sure if anyone has any knowledge in the Terraform space, if this is the same thing. Not quite sure. If no one knows, if someone can answer it in chat, that'd be great. I see another one. Since Bicep currently is compile time, will this change to be runtime, or will it be inserted as a pre-compile step? I think that would be an answer for Tate or Anthony. You guys know?
So comment on the Terraform data source. So the resource exists. It's similar to what data sources do. Terraform is doing them a little bit differently, but I'm not 100% sure how Terraform works when a data source is null. I think the data source just goes in and, hey, this data source doesn't exist, and the whole data object is null. So what happens in the Bicep if it's flagged as, optional or, don't fail? Does that resource become null? How do you deal with that in code? Do you then, yes, so it's great that the Bicep doesn't fail, but I want to then go through and figure out something about that.
So null checks would be required to make sure that the resource isn't null before.
Oh, I see it right there on line 13. Yeah, so that's how Terraform data sources work. So yes, that's beautiful. My only comment is I hate these single character magic characters on these things, because I can never remember if it's a bang sign or a question mark or an ampersand. And I have to look in the code, I have to look in the documents every single time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, it's different with every language, and we want to make it as simple as possible. But
completely understand it, and I know we've gone down this path. I've just gone through the the whole a ton of coding where I needed the question marks and the bangs and figuring out which one is which and which magic character does what is just like, I wish there was a very verbose way of doing it, because what I end up doing is I put a comment in front of it and say that this question mark means this, and this bang symbol means this.
Right,
just for my own purposes. I'm old and I can't remember these things anymore.
You just have to keep the documentation open. I know I do all the time as well, just to make sure I'm not using the wrong decorator or something. Going back to the question, Anthony Tate, if you can answer, since Bicep is compile time, will this change be runtime, or will it be inserted as a pre-compile step?
It should be. It shouldn't change anything with Bicep as far as the compilation. It'll happen while like for the decorator, for example, the check will happen before the deployment put is actually placed. First, we'll do a get attempt to see if the resource exists before making the create call.
Let me know if that didn't answer your question. More. Will this also work in combination with the extensibility feature, for example, graph resources?
I'll need to confirm that, but the goal would be yes.
Yes. I think if we're including this, we want to make sure that the extensibility features will work with this as well. Either working on it from our team or from the MS Graph side, I think we'll try to figure out a solution. Okay. Chris Lewis, I think you also had another comment concerned about single magic character flags versus a decorator.
Again, that was just me commenting again. But no,
Okay.
thank you for, yeah, just again, old person
Sounds good.
issues.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
I just don't
we
want to have to
covered.
put a Post-it note on my monitor like I do everything else.
Right. Makes sense. Cool. Any other comments? You could definitely come off of mute and ask directly if you'd like. Otherwise, we can probably move on. And I think that was actually the last topic of the day. So we can go straight into Q&A. Any updates you guys would like to ask about, or if there aren't any questions, we could always end early as well. Christian?
Yeah, one question that just came to my mind, the resource existence feature. My main use case for that would probably be to deploy Key Vault secret passwords. However, this is only useful if I can actually generate a password in Bicep, which currently is not really possible. I know there's a GitHub issue around that. Is there any consideration to allow something like that? I hate deployment scripts. They're annoying.
I know. So yeah, we have talked directly with the Key Vault team and asked them about this. I think conversations are still being had. Unfortunately, there isn't a really good answer or a good solution that we can build, because I think there are some security, privacy issues that the Key Vault team wants to make sure that we address, and there's not so much that we can do on our end. But I think that's the best answer we could give you right now. I'm sorry. However, if anyone else on my team has a better answer that they can give, that would be great. But in the meantime, we've looked into it. There's not too much that we can do about it right now, unfortunately.
Okay.
I think just to add a little bit of extra context, and not that this is a better answer, this is just more answer. Basically, we don't want to. It's not our job to figure out how passwords should be generated. It's sort of outside of our subject matter expertise. It's really on the Key Vault team to own that space. We're talking to the Key Vault team now about doing a Key Vault data plane provider to expose more Key Vault functionality in Bicep. If there's going to be password generation in Bicep, it will land most likely in that provider. So we'll see as we progress with that provider if that is something that we can eventually light up. But Stephanie's right. There's not any real update that we're going to have in the short term.
Right.
Any other questions? I see one in chat. Was there any updates on Bicep Deploy? Unfortunately, Stephen, if you weren't here in the first 10 minutes, we presented on that. But let me provide a link in chat for the documentation. We have recently merged documentation to cover this. I'm not sure if it's fully out yet, but this will be presented or shared in the recording later on YouTube if you want to rewatch. Taylor?
Hey, thank you. Long time listener, first time caller. I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of existing logic because Bicep and ARM are supposed to be state-based deployments. Can you guys offer some use cases of when I would want to do that kind of logic after things have already been put in place? I'm at a loss.
You're talking about when you would want to use the existence check functionality, Taylor?
Yes, to decide whether I want to deploy or not deploy something. I mean, I understand the small use case with the key vault secrets. You have one secret, you feed it in. If it already exists, you don't change it. But how many other scenarios, how many other times would you decide to do or not to do something if you're trying to deploy the exact state that's represented in Bicep? That's where I'm trying to, I can't figure out where this logic would fit in.
If someone hasn't already, if we could link to the check if exists GitHub issue, people have added a lot of examples over the
Okay.
years to that issue. You could take a look through that. The short answer is it's almost exclusively some wonky resource provider API implementation that just doesn't really make itself, it wasn't designed in such a way to make it good with IAC, which usually means there's some resource provider contract violation. And we've sort of historically taken the stance of the RP should fix that. And this is us kind of acquiescing on that a little bit over the years, that it's unlikely that those things are going to get solved. And so we're trying to make more things possible, even if it's not the most ideal solution.
I appreciate that, and thank you for providing that link. That was the piece of information I was missing. So I'll go and read over that. That looks like a very extensive issue, so I'll enlighten myself that way. I appreciate all the options being available, so I'm not denying that this should be added. I just, hopefully I can figure out
No,
where there might be a use case for it. Yeah. Yeah.
In an ideal world, it actually shouldn't be necessary, and we were trying to avoid it being necessary, but we gave up, basically.
Okay. I can understand that. Yeah, we have plenty of scenarios where we try to avoid something and we're like, you know what, after all, let's just kind of put it in anyway. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Stephanie, to the Bicep deploy, I think what Stephen was asking about, I'm guessing, was about the Bicep deploy feature that we've kind of put on the back burner design-wise a few times.
Got it.
But we don't have any material update on that one right now, Stephen. It's something that will be up for consideration again for the bromine semester, which planning will start in March and the semester will start in April. So we'll know at the beginning of April if there's a chance that we'll be able to fund that work.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying. To further extend on Taylor, your question, yeah, there's been a lot of use cases included in the issue. I think we tried to, I guess, document every single one of the use cases to make sure we can at least try to cover as many as possible, if not all. There's some use cases that we just could not integrate in this solution, at least for the first iteration. That being said, the survey that Tate had linked is also a really great place to put your feedback for the check if resource exists. It also documents asking if this use case doesn't work, what solution would be better. So we would love to go through those specifically, especially if we missed a comment in the Bicep issue itself. Cool. John asks, when can we expect to export as Bicep outside of the RC portal? I can't guarantee you an answer on that. It's slowly rolling out. I would say just check every week. Right now, I think internally for all Microsoft folk, it should be available today. But that being said, it takes time. Unfortunately, I can't give you a solid answer on that, sorry. If anyone has any idea from my team how long that usually takes to roll out, that would be great if you can give an answer, but can't guarantee anything. Joshua Waddell is asking, I'm wondering if this could help with the domain validation component of a front door profile. Can you explain a little bit further what you mean by the domain validation component?
Yeah, so I haven't actually checked this in a while. It's been a while since I've run the template in my demo environment. But essentially, the first time you deploy a front door profile, you can get the whole thing done, right? everything start to finish, certificate setup, and the domain validation that's required to kind of like authenticate your domain, right? But once that domain has been validated against front door, secondary deployments of that same operation fail. So I'm just curious if the if exists piece would be able to help with that particular part. I don't know where that sits in terms of ARM, but it's just something that I'm going to test out. So it wasn't necessarily a question. It's more of just like a comment. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something that we really want to be able to cover, but sometimes there are some permissions outside of our, I guess, outside of what Bicep can do and outside of what ARM template can do in reaching specific RP data planes. But I think we'll try to address as much as possible. I think we're focusing on like the key vault portion of secrets and making sure that whatever is read can be just read as exists and untouched, and at least that specific situation can compile. But we'll look into this and let you know if there's anything we could do. Any roadmap for other extensibility features like ADO? Would love to bicep up ADO projects. Yeah, this is actually a lot of people have been asking about ADO. We are about to release our annual hat survey. I don't remember if you guys remember this from the last 2 years, but it's basically, it'll pop up in VS Code saying, can you please get feedback to on Bicep? One of the questions is, which extensibility provider would you like to see next? That would really help us prioritize which extensibility provider to focus on. Things on that list would be stuff like Helm, Fabric, ADO, of course, Databricks. These are all things people have been asking for. We are slowly trying to get them out as soon as possible. Key Vault is our next plan. We'll start hopefully working on that next semester, so in a couple of months. But there's only so much we can do unless we build a third-party extensibility template, I guess, for other people to be able to include their own providers and whatever they would like. But for the meantime, we'll have this survey out to help prioritize which one we want to focus next, and then the one after that. Okay. There are a couple of large issues around passing a resource to a module, most closely related to role assignments. Is that currently work in progress or planned to be worked on this year? I'm not sure if Alex, you have an answer for that.
It is on the short list. Basically, oddly enough, these two features are related. The what if short circuiting fix that's in progress of going out that solves some cases around nested templates not being tracked by pre-flight or what if. That fix enables passing resources around as parameters and outputs, which itself should put us on a good path to making role assignments easier. That's a long way of saying I'm optimistic that we will make good progress on this in the next 6 months, but we'll know more right around April 1st when we finish our semester planning.
So that being said, hopefully we'll have an answer for you in the late April community call. Or we can announce it on April Fool's Day. That would be pretty fun. What is the status of deployment stacks? What if? Alex, I think you have the most context here, unless Angel's here.
Is Angel here?
He is not. I just checked.
Okay. I think the tentative date right now is May 15th. That work is active. We're trying to get it done as fast as possible. That will coincide with the noise reduction improvements that we talked about, I think 2 community calls ago. So fingers crossed in the May-June timeframe.
Cool. Sounds good. I think those were all the questions. Any other questions? You can put your hand up or unmute directly. All right, then I guess we can end 20 minutes early. Thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, please fill out the surveys. We really, really want to hear your feedback to focus on what, I guess, what to prioritize and make sure that all of your use cases are covered. But thank you everyone, and I'll see you guys all next month.
Everyone.
Awesome.